strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Bulldog once again, continuing on with one of my most popular series, where we look at a beginner's guide to starting each Splinter. Today we are getting into Death, as I've been promising for several days. I'm a little late on it. I know my patrons are getting on me. By the way, if you want to have a heads up on what videos are coming next, what cards I'm going to be talking about, my Patreon link is below. Or if you just are enjoying these videos, getting lots out of them, want to show your support, be sure to join my Patreon. That link is below. You can contact me. I can get you more info on that if you're confused. But on to our beginner's guide to Death. First, we're going to start out looking at the summoners. So again, I'll get myself off the screen so you don't have to stare at me anymore. Summoners are... We've got a bunch of different options. And what Death is really going to do is debuff the other side. And there are various ways to do this, and you can counter different types. You can counter melee, you can counter range, you can counter magic. You'll see there's a bunch of different debuffs here just from the summoner. So the one you want to play can possibly depend on what you're expecting to face on the other side. So very early in the game, when you're at novice and at the beginning of bronze, you see a lot of melee. So Zentar is actually pretty effective. I don't really like him too much. Him and Contessa are the ones you get from the starter bundle, and I really don't use them a lot. I'm not a huge fan of them unless I know, okay, if they're playing melee only, okay, go Zentar's a great option because everybody's going to be melee. I like the ones over here on the left a little bit better. So Mimosa will decrease range damage, has Void, is going to stop healing. Those are very, very good. She's the legendary summoner. She's the one that's kind of expensive to get. But as far as like renting legendary summoners, Mimosa's much cheaper than Jotun, than Llama. Not near as expensive there. The other one that I like that honestly I'd probably put on equal value, or put on as far as value goes, I would say is kind of equal to Mimosa, and that is Ouster here. Ouster reflects magic damage, and that is very, very good. Now, overall, not as good as Mimosa, but when you consider it's a much cheaper price and is a cheaper mana cost, I would say in terms of value, if you're looking at one death summoner to go invest in, Ouster is probably the one that I would choose, because as you progress in the game, there's almost always going to be magic on the other side. Magic is so effective, tends to be the most effective form of damage because it ignores armor and it can't be dodged. So a lot of people try to go with magic, but having that reflect can really be a very, very solid counter. Critmancer is one of the most expensive ones just because of scarcity, but it is going to be a good option because even if they don't play a lot of melee, the -1 to health, the -1 to speed are always going to be valuable. I guess unless it's reverse speed, but outside of that rule set, those two are always going to be valuable. So it's a very solid summoner there. So I've kind of got them in the order that I would use them in, or recommend getting them. But Mimosa and Ouster are really going to be the two, and they're going to be a great counter to magic. Because that's a common question I get. How do I counter these magic teams? I did a video on a water magic deck, and everybody loved it. Everybody loves running that team. This is a very solid counter to that, and we'll see that later. For those of you who have been watching my live streams, you've probably seen me throw out this combination quite a bit. So I want to talk about it at the beginning here, because a lot of people are going to want to go run and get these cards, and they are very, very expensive cards. Very expensive cards if you're going to buy them, although they're actually not that expensive to rent. I'm going to show you at the very end of the video what this duo can really do. I'll show you a diamond battle. They don't really take off until gold. Lord of Darkness I actually still like very early on, because that Enrage got decent survivability with 8 health, 2 armor. That Enrage is going to give him a very, very nice chunk of damage that he can deal. So I do still like him early, but he doesn't have his shield early on. He doesn't have his retaliate. He does not have his stun. He's going to get all those later in the game. So at level 1, they don't really take off until level 3. So if you're watching my live streams and you're going to go buy this team and they're not performing at level 1 the way you're seeing them perform in Diamond League for me, That's why they're not near as good early in the game. Still great cards to work on, but you're not really going to see them take off until later if you're sitting in bronze. Corrupted Pegasus again gets a level 3 gets a tank heal, which is very, very good. A level 2 gets strengthened, which gives everybody an extra health. But at level 1, okay, 2 melee damage with reach. Not really all that special for six mana. Not necessarily all that special at bronze. Still not a bad card by any means, but not the dominant force you'll see later on. So, which tanks should we use? Here are some of the most common. Again, I do like Lord of Darkness, but when you're first starting the game in Bronze League, Haunted Spirit is going to be your best friend. That heal as a tank, 5 mana tank with 7 health and a heal, and at least some decent damage to go along with it. Two melee damage in bronze is very solid. Haunted Spirit is going to be kind of the key piece to your squad and works very, very well. We've got Dark Han here, who again has taunt, lots of health and taunt, so is a very effective option that you can use multiple ways. Sometimes you like to put your taunting tank in the first spot. Sometimes you like to put them in the second spot or even the last spot, and kind of make them split the damage between the characters that can only attack the first line and your ranged and magic and everybody else, and kind of split up that damage so they don't have that focus fire. So any taunting tank like that is always good, but at 10 mana, kind of hard to fit him in, so you don't really see him used as much early in the game. Bone Golem is another one that you start with that if you're expecting magic, Bone Golem is very, very good. And we're going to see some examples of that here in a second. But typically Haunted Spirit is what you're going to be going with. But if you've seen their history and they're running that water team, with that water magic team that I did my last video on, and you're expecting that, go with Bone Golem with Ouster, and you're going to get that Void, you're going to get that Reflect, and you're just going to eat your opponents alive. It's a great magic counter, and especially early in the game. So one of the things that Death can actually do pretty well is have fairly low mana damage. You can get some attackers that don't cost a ton of damage. So Soulstorm is one of the ones I like to get pretty early. Soulstorm has 3 damage for only 5 mana and is very fast at 5 speed. 5 speed for a level 1 monster is extremely fast actually. And then you've got some other Undead Archer. It gets 2 attack fairly quickly. Twisted Jester gets 3 attack in silver, I believe. Some of these can even ramp their damage up a little bit. But you've got a lot of different options here that you can play to get out a decent number of attackers with a low amount of mana. So common strategy early on is put Haunted Spirit, put a decent tank out there, and then if there's not a lot of mana that you can use, you can still get a decent chunk of damage out there on the board, and it tends to be a little more effective at low mana than some of these other splinters. So then there are some high mana damage as well. I mean, Cthulhu over here is nice, but again doesn't really take off until later. So 3 magic attack for 11 mana, not all that great at level 1. At level 4 has stun, has last stand. It's so really takes off later in the game. But I mean, if you've got a high mana battle, can still be an option. Octopider can actually decrease melee at a higher level. He's got 3 ranged attack, but 8 mana, kind of expensive, hard to get in early in the game. So a lot of these cards just don't take off until later. Grim Reaper actually can be used early, especially if you're going with Ouster and you don't already have Affliction. If you're using Mimosa, you've already started with Infliction. But if you've got Ouster, 3 ranged attack with Affliction for 6 mana is a very good deal early in bronze. Ancient Lick has 3 magic damage and can actually be very effective early on as well, and then kind of useful early, and then falls silver, gold. I didn't think was as effective, and then you max him out and he gets a revive, and then that's really nice as well. So kind of little variance in there, but another useful cards. And when you're first starting out in bronze, you just don't have enough mana a lot of times to get these cards, and when you can throw multiple those low mana cards in there. It tends to be kind of more my strategy. But as you progress and get into higher mana battles, these can be some very solid cards that you might want to think about investing. And then one thing Death can do really well is they can have a lot of low mana support cards. Shadowy Presence over here is a must for every Death deck. Even at bronze, he's kind of like an upgraded chicken at 1 mana for 4 health, can just absorb some hits. Eventually he's going to get strengthened and give everybody an extra health, and then he's going to get Inspire and increase everybody's melee damage. So you'll see I almost always pair Shadowy Presence with the Deadly Duo I showed before to give them some extra melee damage and ramp up their damage even more. Getting those buffs for 1 mana is very good. Fallen Spectre's kind of the opposite end. So again, even at bronze, 1 magic damage at 6 speed for 2 mana can be solid. But then he's going to have Blind later. He's going to be able to decrease range damage, decrease melee damage. He is very, very effective there. The Rose of Nightshade, again, one magic damage for 1 mana can be a solid card to throw in. Gold gets a triage, gets a backline heal, which is very effective. Undead Priest going to decrease everybody's health. That's certainly a solid debuff. Gains a magic attack later. Death Elemental can later on decrease everybody's magic attack. So you can get a lot of debuffs, or in Shadowy Presence case, buffs on the field for a very cheap amount of mana. And having a bunch of these cards gives you some flexibility based on what you're expecting to face. So Death can be kind of trickier to run because again, it's focused more on debuffing your opponent than buffing up yourself. And sometimes that can require reading what your opponent's going to play based on their history, based on the rule set and what you see. So it can be a tough beginner team to run, but it gets very, very powerful, especially late in the game. Death is by far my most effective Splinter, and I really like them, and I focus quite a bit of energy on these cards because at higher levels I absolutely love it. I think they have some of the strongest cards in the game. So let's go take a look at a few battles, and I want to show, I really want to show how this works against the team that I did my last video on. This team right here, we've kind of got a cheap tank up front and then loading up with magic damage, and I just want you guys to see how good Alistair is. We've got Blast here, which even makes it a little better. Now you're seeing a bunch of cards that I didn't even necessarily recommend, but you've got high health up here, and they're just going to be able to absorb these magical attacks, and they're just going to reflect it back. And then look at this, we're dealing damage to their back line just on reflect, not even doing too much damage with our own attacks, but you're reflecting those blasts as well. Alistair is a great counter to Roar of the Seas because he doesn't have a lot of health. With that blast, you're going to reflect everything back. You just kind of let him destroy himself. It works very, very well. Let's show one more battle where we're going to do it against Kron. We're going to do it against Kron. Everybody says, okay, Kron's unbeatable in Bronze League, right? Kron's unbeatable in Bronze League. You throw out Llama Kron, and you're going to win. Not with Alistair, not with Bone Golem. So again, Bone Golem's a great magic counter. Even Chicken! Look at our Chicken right there doing damage back to Kron. Getting a little bit of cheap damage in the back. And we've got that Affliction. The Affliction isn't... You're not going to be able to do anything with that on Kron because we're slower. And Llama's going to cleanse it. So unfortunately, can't get the Affliction there. But we're getting just enough damage. We've got... So 4 damage from the archers in the back there. We've got 3 damage from Bone Golem. We've got Bone Golem who is taking reduced damage from that void and then reflecting it back. And it just works. It just works. It's a great magic counter there. And then I promised I'd show you guys. Here's versus Llama Kron with at a higher level, at a diamond level, just so you guys can kind of see what you're working towards. We've got our deadly duo here, Lord of Darkness, Corrupted Pegasus. And then here's Shadowy Presence, giving everybody that extra offense. So you can see we've got 9 total damage right there, and it's going to increase here in just a second. See, you've got that shield. It's taking very little damage. You'll see it increase here in just a second when Lord of Darkness gets damaged. I'm waiting for Lord of Darkness to get damaged. There we go. Now he's up to 8 damage at a time. 8 damage. And then, so back here, we've got Octopider inflicting blind. He's decreasing melee damage. We've got Cthulhu here, who's stunning, decreasing their health. He's got Last Stand, so as I put him in the back, so if it gets down to it, just kind of like you've got Kron on the other side. Now he doesn't heal, but still going to have a ton of health, a lot of damage. Again, going to be inflicting those stuns, going to be inflicting those cripples. So we can kind of go back and forth with Kron a little bit if it came to that point, and be able to decrease his health, stun him. So again, the stun's not going to help with Llama up there, but still be able to decrease his health so he's not healing for as much. So can even get some things there. Then you see that Retaliate in there. The Retaliate from Lord of Darkness with that 8 melee damage is just so good. It's so hard to get through him. Now eventually they got the Affliction on him, so he wasn't able to, Pegasus wasn't able to continue healing him. Eventually he fell. But Void, he's taking reduced magic damage with Void. If you went with Ouster, he'd be reflecting that magic damage. He's got a shield, so he takes reduced damage from melee, from ranged. He's a very good tank, and then dishing out tons and tons of damage. And we've got plenty of damage here to get through Kron, even at Last Stand. So everybody talking about how powerful Kron is. You can beat him with death. You can absolutely beat him with death, and it's not the only way. We've talked about using sneak to beat him. But death squads are very, very powerful, and they can be tricky to use. They're definitely not an easy team to use, but if used right, they are very, very effective. So it's not a Splinter I would necessarily recommend ignoring. Like a lot of people just don't like death and they completely ignore death. Death is not a weak Splinter by any means. Death is absolutely not a weak Splinter. One of my favorites is, and as I said earlier, is the strongest on my team. So if you want to see me run a lot of death teams, be sure to check out my live streams. My next one, if you're watching this video when it comes out, will be on Sunday at 1 Eastern. But if you're watching it later, there's constantly live streams. Come to my Discord, check my Twitter, check my YouTube to see when the next one is. I can't wait to see you guys there. I hope everybody has a great weekend. It's the weekend here. So I'm excited and can't wait to get to more videos. So thank you guys so much. I'll be seeing you around.